Welcome everybody to today's session. My name is Meher. I am Director Research, Marketing and Communications at Karandaz, Pakistan, and I will be moderating today's session. We have a very illustrious group of panelists today, and none of them need introductions, but I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on each of them. So beginning with Mr. Mudassir Aqil, who is CEO of Telenor Microfinance Bank and Easypaisa. Mudassir has over 24 years of banking experience in the US and Pakistan and has a burning passion to fuel innovation and is an accomplished practitioner and thought leader in fintech and digital strategy. As CEO Telenor Microfinance Bank and Easypaisa, Mudassir has been a committed champion of financial inclusion through technology. Since taking over at Telenor Bank, Mudassir has led its digital transformation. Under his leadership, Telenor Microfinance Bank's payments and lending business continues to achieve new heights in its journey of transforming Pakistan into a financially inclusive society. Mudassir has also serves as a director on the boards of the Pakistan Microfinance Network and the Pakistan FinTech Network. Before joining Telenor Microfinance Bank, Mudassir led Finca Microfinance Bank as CEO for 8 years. So welcome Mudassir to today's session. Our next speaker is Kasif Shahid. Kasif is co-founder and director of Finja Private Limited. Kasif is a pioneer in digital payments and a mobile financial services veteran with 22 years banking experience in global and domestic markets. Kasif has worked, consulted, and partnered with banks in multiple geographies, including East Africa, Singapore, the UAE, and Pakistan, with a specific focus on building, launching, and scaling digital and mobile-led banking products and services. Kasif's specialization also stretches into the management and the build-up of supporting delivery channels to businesses including ATMs, points of sale terminals, e-commerce, call centers, branch and service center management, and in forging cross-industry alliances and in developing winning partnerships with payments associations, technology solution providers, outsourcing entities, and in working closely with regulators across multiple countries. Previously, Kasif was the digital head of ABN AMRO in Singapore and then moved back to Pakistan with Standard Chartered Bank. He has also served as the digital banking head of MCB, and today Kasif is considered as one of Pakistani fintechs promoting digital payments. Our third panelist for the day is Atyab Tahir. Many congratulations to Tahir on recently being announced as the CEO of Hugo Bank, one of the successful applicants for the digital banking regulation, for the digital bank licenses. Atyab is a business leader specializing in building digital businesses in emerging markets. He moved to Pakistan 11 years ago to focus on inclusion in a country that's largely excluded from having access to modern-day digital and financial solutions. Atyab has worked with Tamir Bank and Easypaisa, HBL, JazzCash, and MasterCard in Pakistan to try to fulfill the mission of bringing as many Pakistanis to the financial fold as possible. At Hugo Bank, Atyab and his team are now working to build a digital bank that the excluded people of Pakistan deserve, an FI that is relevant and contextual to the needs of its users and fully embedded in their lives. And last but not least, we have with us Mahmood Shamsher, who is country representative of Alif Capital. Mahmood has been associated with the financial industry for nearly 20 years now. His career spans numerous roles, including leading HR and learning. And in his consulting role, Mahmood has been involved in the development of a feasibility for a leasing company in post-conflict zones to support retail banks better serve the needs of the market. Mahmood has led Alif's efforts in Pakistan since 2022, including the application of a the DRB license and onwards as Alif pivots to offer technology to support digital banks and the financial ecosystem. So ladies and gentlemen, with this illustrious panel, I am going to pose my first question to Atyab. Hugo Bank put out a press release earlier this week which stated that the bank plans to open 34 million new accounts by 2027. So that's less than 4 years. How does Hugo Bank, under your leadership, achieve that exciting target? And what are some of the key segments that Hugo Bank is planning to prioritize, given the fact that we have very low levels of financial literacy and very significant gender gaps in mobile SIM ownership and internet connectivity?
I think I'm catching a lot of flack for that press release because most people in Pakistan think that 34 million accounts is not possible. But let me point to two recent examples, right? We have EasyPaisa, which was the first branchless banking service in the country, championed by a telecom and a microfinance bank. Then very quickly, it was followed by JazzCash. And between JazzCash and EasyPaisa today, they have close to 90 million wallets that have been opened. Whether they're being used or not is a different story. There is a struggle going on, I know, in both organizations to make sure that they're constantly creating relevance and use cases to increase usage. So in a country of 220 million people, where there are 130 million adults, where the adult population is growing by about 4% every year, and will continue to do so over a period of time, and where people don't have access to financial services, opening accounts is the least of our concerns, right? We will open accounts. Opening accounts and keeping them dormant is what every bank does. Even today, the largest bank in the country, HBL, has close to 20 million accounts, perhaps more. But a very small percentage of that is actually active. The reason people don't use bank accounts is because they do not connect to them. Because we have failed to create relevance and we have failed to embed ourselves in their lives. And that's the whole thesis of digital banking. The more relevance you create through building use cases, the more people will use them, right? I have no doubt in my mind that it is going to be an arduous task. 34 million accounts, I don't expect to do those alone. I intend to create partnerships. There are many fintechs that are playing in the space. I also intend to partner with existing telcos. I intend to partner with existing banks, existing fintechs, NBFCs, to go out and champion the cause of relevant financial inclusion. So it's the quick answer is through partnerships and collaborations, and by creating use cases. And I see a smile on Mahmood's face because him and I have had these conversations several times over the last 4 months when we were working together on something. To answer your second question about creating an environment where people adapt digital financial services, and when there is no financial savvy or there's lack of access for digital financial services for women specifically. Look, I think the recognition is there, right? And by the time we ramp up and other banks ramp up, the recognition is there that women are not, they don't have equitable access to telco services. And I look to my telco partners to actually solve that problem. Having spent some time with one of the telcos recently, I can tell you that it's front and center on their agenda. I'm pretty sure it's front and center for other telcos' agenda as well. There are some cultural hindrances, like in certain parts of the country, male members of the household would not want a female member of the household to have a SIM in their name. That sort of is a larger issue, right? Because the reason is because they do not want their privacy encroached in any way. So we also have to, the larger question to answer here is data privacy and protection. And I think with the data privacy and protection bill that the Ministry of IT is working on, and with data protection that we have to abide by in financial services, we can actually ensure lack of encroachment of privacy, and maybe encourage more women to get SIMs and access to financial services. You also talked about connectivity, right? Connectivity is not just an issue for women, connectivity is a general issue. The moment you get out of KLI, you have major connectivity problems. And that's why we cannot ignore the fact that USSD continues to be a very strong channel. Now, if you talk to a well-educated urban telco person, they will tell you, hey, no problem, we'll get there. But we have to solve for connectivity at all levels, and we have to continue to build USSD as a channel where we service people. And even today, when smartphones fail and data fails, people still have those OG phones that they're using to carry out transactions. At least in one of the telco-owned financial services, I know that nearly 50% of the transactions are carried out through USSD. So, and if you look at what's happening in Africa, despite the fact that they have better connectivity than Pakistan, USSD continues to be a channel that they promote. And I think we need to continue to do that over a period of time. When it comes to financial awareness and financial literacy, again, it's a matter of partnerships. So if you look at what microfinance banks have done over a period of time, they've actually made people aware of financial services and how to access financial services. They may not have achieved the same scale that digital is trying to achieve, but they have created awareness. And in my journey of 11 years, at least what I've seen is that people are more financially aware and financially savvy today than perhaps they were when I came to Pakistan. Karam Das has had a big role to play in that, because they went out and worked with grassroots NGOs and nonprofit organizations to promote financial awareness and financial literacy. But this all comes back full circle to be able to create relevance and the right use cases. If you have the right use cases built in the service that you're trying to provide, you will find that people would want to use your services. A bad example of this is the very recent NBFCs unlicensed predatory loan apps that came out that actually got a lot of traction. And at one point in time, I read that they were doing close to 100,000 loans a day for one of these predatory loan apps. So the need is there. And the moment they were able to tap into that need and showcase a product, as bad as that product may have been, they saw traction. Now, that leads us to another problem in the ecosystem, right? When you leave gaps and when you focus on just one or two use cases like we have done in the past, those gaps are filled by predators. So we have to sort of have a broad ambit. And what I expect is that the ecosystem will come together and start to realize that every player is trying to solve part of a problem. And together we can solve the bigger problem if we put our efforts, if we combine our efforts. So much like my childhood cartoon, Captain Planet, we have to combine our powers, and we have to identify where those gaps are so we don't let those predators in. And I assure you that there is enough need in the market that getting that to 34 million number won't just be pie in the sky. It would very soon be a point of view, because we've done it in other aspects of our lives as well, right? We've done it telco, we've done it in telco-owned payment companies, we've done it most recently in internet and the hot topic of the day, which is ChatGPT. We have achieved scale. So achieving scale is not a problem in a country like Pakistan. We just have to realize the problem that we're trying to solve and solve for it holistically.
Okay, so Atyab, that gives me a sort of perfect entry point with Kasif, what you said about partnerships specifically. And if we are to get back to some of the issues that you raised with regards to, developing the USSD channel, ensuring connectivity, building on financial literacy, reducing some of the gender gaps that the really chronic, persisting gender gaps that this country faces, then Kasif, and this is going to be a tough question, but what is the role that entities like Finja can play in when you partner with digital banks, then how can those partnerships overcome some of those very challenges?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking the question, Meher. If you allow me, in our thinking at Finja, the biggest thing that's happening now will happen in Pakistan. It's happening in Pakistan, happening everywhere, is embedded finance. And we think that embedded finance is the biggest happening in the financial services space for the last 500 years. Meaning that since we invented retail banking or consumption banking, this is the biggest happening. And this is how digital banks and fintechs are going to partner. And this is how everything is going to change. So embedded finance, simply put, is that what's happening is that banking is becoming invisible, and payments and lending or credit or financial services are going to be consumed in non-banking apps and portals. And it's the digital banks, because remember that digital banks are digital first. They're like Amazon and not Walmart. So in their foundational design, they're going to design to capture embedded finance through banking as a platform and banking as a service. So what's going to happen is that digital banks are going to partner with a multitude of fintechs, and these fintechs are going to be conduits that are going to embed themselves in non-financial entities, whether they are SMEs or startups or whatever. But as long as they have mobile apps and as long as they have digital portals, payments and lending is going to be embedded into those non-banking banking apps. And the digital banks, and at some level the incumbent banks, are going to provide the railroads through which these services are going to be consumed in the non-banking entities, meaning that the customer journeys, without being impacted, are going to be able to consume these digital banking services. So if you are a woman and you use a certain kind of app or a portal, you'd be able to go out and consume lending and credit and payments and whatnot while you're on that app without needing to alter your customer journey. So, the digital banks and the EMIs and these new age licenses that are coming out are once in a lifetime opportunity in a country to then go out and create these meaningful collaborations with the fintechs that are out there, whether they're licensed and unlicensed, and through that take banking from being a vertical to a horizontal. So what I'm saying is that this collaboration of digital banks and fintechs, if done properly, is going to do exactly what happened in technology 20 years ago. 25 years ago, technology was an isolated vertical. And if I were to ask you of thinking of big technology companies 20 years ago, you'd think of IBM and Microsoft and Intel and things like that. But today, all enterprises, all businesses, all SMEs are some level technology companies. That's because technology has moved from a vertical to a horizontal. And that has really gone out and unleashed tremendous amount of value. And what I'm trying to say here is that banking is following the same dynamic. But what banking needs to move from a vertical to a horizontal are these new age digital banks that are designed ground up digital first, and then through that collaboration getting into non-financial entities through banking as a service and banking as a platform, and through that these changes will happen. And it's through these changes that we would go out and create this the women engagement. without needing to alter, women journeys, and at the same time go out and bring in so many people that are, and businesses that are underbanked today or unbanked. So it's through these, if we were to go out and create digital banks and there were no fintechs out there for the digital banks to partner, then digital banks will stay limited in their ability to make that change. But the good thing is that there are a certain amount of fintechs, and more are going to come out just because the digital banks are coming out now.
So Kasif, when you say going horizontal, does that remain limited to payments, or are you talking about, sort of going way beyond payments?
No. When banking moves from a vertical to a horizontal, what that means is that, let's start with credit. The most important thing is credit. So if I am an SME today and I have a portal or an app, I have tremendous amounts of data. First of all, as the SME, own the relationship. I understand the vendors and the suppliers in that relationship. I have the data of those relationships. I have transactions. I have the trust. And now within that environment, anytime when a buyer or a seller wants to do a transaction, I, as an SME, would be able to provide credit at the moment when the rubber is hitting the road, without my buyer or supplier altering their customer journey. But this is happening through a collaboration in the background, which is not really visible to the user from the fintech and the bank. So the fintech as conduit has embedded itself into that portal, and the bank from behind is providing credit lines. So scoring is, and the SME is now sharing data, which is converting real time into a score, and without altering the transaction or the journey, credit has been made. Similarly, payments would go the same way. So if I were to go out and make a payment in a mobile app or a portal, I don't have to be a financial services player to go and facilitate that transaction. A earlier example of that would be, many years ago, in these elaborate video games, when you want to upgrade your character, you could go out and do that without really going anywhere, because the gaming industry had embedded payments into the play, and you go out and purchase some gold coins, whatever, upgrade your. So credit is actually a more sophisticated play, but credit and payments and anything else that financial services serves would be able to be consumed in these non-financial services entities.
Okay, thank you. That was very clear. So moving on to Mehmood Bank, sort of how Alif Capital. How do you see Alif Capital pivoting and contributing to the digital finance ecosystem in Pakistan going forward?
Thank you, Meher. I'm actually quite privileged also to be amongst nothing but mentors and guides in all of their capacities. I've worked with Mudassir, Atyab. I've had the pleasure of interacting with Kasif. So I'm really going to be piggybacking off their conversations right now. I wish Mudassir had gone before me. Atyab and I have had these conversations many a time. This industry is really going to be one that needs partnerships. And I think Kasif, everything that Kasif just said, really reaffirms that. I love the way that he described this in terms of the horizontal, and I love the gaming analogy. It's really going to speak to the youth. The future, I imagine, and we at Alif imagine, is one where financial services are truly embedded in everything that we're doing. And what that means for us is that the ecosystem has been suitably built for scale and integrations to the point that anyone can act on this very, very quickly, which means a consumer is able to take their day-to-day transactions, use them off what they're already using them, be it an app, whether it's banking or SME or merchant, and not just do that based on the data that they have given, but be contributing to the data ecosystem alongside this. I'm going to draw very quickly on something that I love sharing, the Tajikistan story at Aleph. So Tajikistan and Dushanbe is one of the few countries that I've been to that you can live entirely digitally in. And what I mean by that is you can say entirely cashless. It's not cashless first, but it's possible. That means I can do transport, and that means local transport and taxis. I can do day-to-day corner shop groceries. I can do large-scale transactions all digitally. Now, this hasn't happened overnight. It has happened as a result of Aleph thinking ecosystemically about the financial transactions, the movement of monies, and then inversely about the data that's been collected from that. So what they've been able to do, and what we hope to be able to start to do in Pakistan, is create the railroads for consumer finance. And this is just an inroad. It's the first entry to create the credit that Kasif just spoke about. Every SME needs it. The market is so large that there's not enough partners around that are going to be able to do this. But the fact that you start doing this also allows us to create partnerships with SMEs to gain information from them about the transactions that they're doing. SMEs, by the way, Tajikistan has been reluctant, very much like Pakistan, to say, I don't want to be a part of the digital economy because it's a documented economy and you're going to start taxing me. The conversation in Tajikistan pivoted because the digital system created so much new value for SMEs and merchants that they were ready to do this as incremental income, if nothing else. And that alone allowed for them to start conversations around, well, just based on this documented income, what are the products that you can create for me? That creates the next level of products for SMEs. And once you start engaging with them, you can work with distributors. This is a horizontal mindset. Just like Kasif said, it's horizontal because you're thinking about value chains and not thinking about my product is perfect. I'm going to talk about—
So Mahmood?
Sure.
If I could interrupt you, just a couple of questions. What facilitated that horizontal mindset? Because, you're talking, it seems as though, that ecosystem obviously went beyond Aleph, right? There were other players in it, whether they were from the public sector, regulators, sort of other fintechs. What made that horizontal mindset move at a certain time? And also a little bit about how large is Tajikistan, what's the population size, what are education levels? Could you shed a little bit of light on that also?
I won't promise to give you information about Tajikistan. I know my numbers will be very weak, and Mudassir starts sitting there most probably thinking Mahmood's numbers are always weak. But let me say this, demographically, the country is very similar to Pakistan in terms of internet penetration. In fact, maybe less so than Pakistan in terms of education, in terms of the barriers to entry. So if Karan Das did a report some time back that Imran did on the inclusion, financial services inclusion. The data would be nearly identical to Tajikistan when they started about 10 years ago. So demographically, I don't think they were very different. So coming now to your question of what created the change, I can speak candidly about what I think Aleph got right, rather than speaking about all the players in the industry. I may not know that very well. But I'll tell you, at Aleph, one of the things that I love is what they call the digital first mindset, which is really constant innovation and a lot of trust delegated down to very young teams that are able to solve problems for themselves. I put this to the test, and I asked Aleph, by the way, how many customer-facing changes they had experienced in the last quarter for their app and the products that they offered. And the number was ridiculously high. It was over 200 changes that they had made in their technology stack to give customers a better service. Not accepting answers just on face value, I brought that same question to banks in Pakistan, and I asked them what changes they had made. And I promise you the answer was below 10 in a quarter. And one of them included their women's product, a launch of a new product for women, and that was the conversion of banks to pink and white balloons and pink checkbooks. That was a new product. That alone is the experience change that they had created. When I think about what Aleph does differently, it is really constantly managing the customer experience. It's building on a brand that's focused on trust. So really trying to figure out what it takes for the young people of Tajikistan to trust Aleph, and being able to find ways of delivering that efficiently, sustainably, and in a manner that's scalable. I think that same journey is going to need to be created in Pakistan. We're going to have to build the tech that's scalable, reliable, and that people can use, just like Kasif said, are able to use in their day-to-day life. It shouldn't be a pain, as Raza Bakr used to say, it shouldn't feel like a visit to the dentist just to avail banking services.
Great. Thank you for that. I think very interesting to follow this journey in its home country, right? Tajikistan is the home country from where it began.
Yes. And we went on to Uzbekistan after that, by the way, where 1 million customers plus, I think 1.1 by now, and growing.
Okay, great. So, Mudassir, thank you for being so patient. Having heard all this, now aware of the macroeconomic situation in the country with the interbank rate hovering at 20%, how do you see the digital bank reaching out to specific segments and being able to lend to them at those rates? Is it, is it possible?
Yeah, thank you, Meher. Great to be here. And let me just begin, first of all, by saying that, hey, Mahmood, even if I gave you a hard time about numbers sometimes, but I can assure you that nobody can light up the room like Mahmood can. So you haven't seen him. If you haven't seen him do that, it's quite an experience. So Meher, I think these kind of interest rates that we are experiencing today, obviously, it's a very difficult environment for all the businesses who are trying to avail credit at this rate. So I would say the one benefit that digital players would have, that their intermediation cost would be much smaller than the traditional players. So the one thing that they can do is that they can actually make these loans available to the private sector at a much lower margin. And then if they are good at using data at a much more reasonable risk premium also. I think that would be the only thing that the digital banks can do in the current environment. But I don't think that this is going to be continued for a very long time. Obviously, policy rates are a tool to manage monetary policy, and eventually the idea is to, once we get a handle on inflation, the rates will come back down to a much more reasonable level. But just to give you some idea that we have actually not increased our lending rates in the last close to 1 year. Now we are thinking about revising them slightly upwards because we had good margins, our intermediation cost is low, and we have over the last 3 years completely moved to a digital first model where we have already closed close to 70% of our branches, and now on track to close the remaining one of them. So this has really come in handy, and I think this really sort of like builds the thesis for even those banks who don't have digital banking license. Nothing really stops them from becoming a digital first or becoming much more efficient using digital channels. And I think this has to be the norm as we move forward in light of that. So in a nutshell,
can I just interject for a small clarification? So this is 70% of your microfinance bank branches that you have, that Telenor Bank has closed down?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So the so the idea is that, first of all, that credit is only one side of the equation. yes, it has become increasingly expensive and probably not conducive for micro and small enterprises, particularly to be able to afford them. If we are talking about over 30-40% interest rates, which are now prevalent in the market. But on the other side, I think there is a massive now need more than ever for people to deploy their deposits in a way that they can actually make some returns and compete against inflation, because their money is losing value very, very quickly. So I think that's where digital banks have a massive advantage to really help people deploy their funds and focus on their financial well-being.
Okay, so but if I am if I've read the regulation correctly, in the pilot stage, when the banks come out and test their product offerings, public deposits is not something that the digital banks will be able to offer, right?
Yeah, so look, we have to, first of all, we are a running organization, so we are going through not the traditional pilot process, but a conversion process. We already have a very large number of deposits with the organization. So, the process that applies to us would be slightly different. But however, even for the other 4 banks, I think we have to think about that, what the design allows them to do in the long run. The pilots would obviously, this is part of the regulatory process. They will eventually graduate from that process in a year or 2, but we have to look at the bigger picture, and this benefit will remain once they graduate from the process.
Of course. Okay. So generally when I speak to entities that applied for the license, entities that have received the NOC, there was this very distinct focus on urban areas and on an urban clientele and urban segments. And so what will it take for digital banks to prioritize rural areas of the country and rural market segments? Who would like to take on that question?
Why? I think it's a nice message to give out, right? That look, we are going out in the rural areas, but most of your activity happens in urban areas. Convert the urban areas first, and rural areas will follow, because they're a beneficiary of what happens in urban areas. So, I'll be Mr. Unpopular here, and I'll say that for digital banks, it's important to first focus on getting what they're bringing to market right, and then get into rural markets to understand what is needed. The dynamics of rural markets are very different from urban markets, and they're largely undocumented. So in order to be able to build financial services for rural areas, first of all, digital banks cannot do it in isolation. They'll have to work with non-profit organizations. They'll have to work with telcos who actually have a presence in rural areas. They'll actually also have to work with banks who have a last mile presence to understand what those journeys are, and then to be able to digitize those journeys in their offerings. I think it's a tall ask for new digital banks to go into rural areas right away. It's a great slogan that we are a bank for people who live in rural areas, but the financial activity there is a fraction of the financial activity in urban areas. Also, you need to start solving for the very same problem we talked about earlier in tier 2, tier 3 urban markets, so that it propagates from the urban cores outward. And look, I'd be the first one to partner with whoever wants to go into a rural area using our financial services as the backbone to go into those markets. But for me, that certainly comes as step 2 or step 3, not as step 1.
Okay, thank you, Atyab. That was very, very candid. Would Kasif, I see
Yeah.
you've unmuted. Would you like to, yes, add to that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what Atyab's saying is making a lot of sense. But, if we were to take a few steps back and see that why is it that, other than the great points that he's made, that why is it that, banking generally happens in the urban settings? And, one of the answers would be that conventional incumbent banks are, their baseline design is around a branch. And what's happened for the last several hundred years is that, the branch becomes the custodian of the relationship, and everything, all the other things are like slap-ons. So digital channels, whether they are an ATM or a debit card or internet or a call center, whatnot, they are just channels which are stemming out of the branch, but the relationship is housed in the branch. The customer is onboarded in the branch. The customer is serviced in the branch. And then he has all of these other add-ons. And the larger and the older the bank is, the more complicated that spaghettiware of digitalware that comes on top of the bank, and everything becomes not very functional. And it's because branch is the villain. Okay, it's because the branch manager's time is limited, her space is limited, the number of customers that she can serve is limited. So the banks for the last several hundred years, and mind you, banking is the only industry that works on an exclusionary policy when it comes to what kind of customers they're going to serve or not. So if I walk into a branch, I'm judged. People look at me up and down, and they try and size my worth. And based on that, they would decide whether I'm going to open an account or not, etc. So it's the banks that are actually choosing who they're going to bank with, and the villain is the branch. Now, obviously, you want to work with people. The old bank model is that you want to work with people that would come and create a deposit with you and then never show up. But the new banking model, where the branch is not the foundational design, as we know, it's the digital, and branch is now one of the channels, and there also it's a fading channel. So the banking model is now completely inverted on its head. Now you want higher number of users who create a large number of activity on you. So it doesn't matter what my balance is, as long as I'm dipping into my app several times a day, and as long as I become a great ambassador and I can bring in many other, my family, my friends, all of those other people, etc., and I can generate that activity, which was Atyab's actually first point, which Mudassir talks a lot about also, that we are now in the engagement economy. It's not about onboarding users and keeping users. It's about onboarding users and then engaging them. And the more you engage with a user, the more valuable that user becomes, because they are now creating data for you. And obviously, your cost of service starts to go down based on the number of interactions the user is doing on it, because the total number of interactions divided by the total number of infrastructure costs that you have, your cost would come lower. So when you start to look at banking through that new lens, folks which are in the rural segment, or folks which don't have high net worth, etc., are not the KPIs that would make them more valuable. What makes you more valuable is very different now. It's like, how can I engage with you, and how much engagement would you make on me, and how would you bring your ecosystem onto me? And I don't need a branch for that. And you will actually bring my cost to service down. So whoever will get into these new areas first and engage users through these meaningful engagements would then have a first mover advantage. So I think the jury is out on this, whether it's not clear anymore, whether, when you go out and spin these new digital banks, would you be better off in going into the urban areas where everybody else is going, or part of your strategy is going to be in rural, given all these changes and the inversion of the banking model and the disappearance of the branch as that main conduit that holds the relationship. So things are changing very quickly. We will see action in the rural space, and this is not the question, but that's why I need to say this. That's why the regulators need to do deep thinking and consider giving digital licenses to players that have patient capital and that are super strategic to Pakistan, because if you have a long-term horizon, you're looking at business models over 10, 20, 30 years, then the way you look at rural Pakistan is going to be very different than if you are funded through private equity and VC funds and your business models are 3 to 5 years. Then obviously you're going to go to areas, where you can skim off profit much quicker. But if you are playing like the Chinese play or like some of the other players with a very long horizon, then things will look different. That's why there should always be a mix of players who are going to get the opportunity to play the digital banking game.
Fascinating, Kasif. That was an amazing way that you pointed out of sort of approaching this whole problem area. Yes, Mudassir. Sorry, Mahmood.
Thank you, Meher. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mudassir. So I really want to talk about some of the consulting work I did prior to Alif. And when you look at retail banks, the reality is that even within urban centers, the retail banks are underserving their customers. A prime example of that will be how many banks each of us banks with. The answer is most probably much higher than any bank would like to look at it or accept it to be. But I bank with 7 banks, which means for 7 banks, I'm a non-valuable, irrelevant entity who's absolutely of no use to them. I'm just another number, except maybe one where I have some of my deposit and they like me for that. But nobody else likes me, right? Now, the reality is the instant somebody starts to consolidate this, they create much greater value for me and consequently much greater value for themselves. Right now, I'm a loss maker. They're not interested in me and they're only interested in one kind of customer, a customer that can bring an average deposit of greater than 500,000 rupees, right? This is the number that's somewhere on their radar that they use and they said, this is my valuable customer. By the way, I'm talking about the conventional banks. I'm not talking about microfinance, credit-focused banks at the moment. I'm talking about the deposit-taking banks. Now, let me talk about the rural customer that has 500,000 rupees available to be placed in a bank. He or she is banked. Whether they have a branch there or not, they have found a way to be banked. It's the others that are not banked. It's someone who's below the 200,000 rupee average balance or lifetime savings that has no services available to them. And I'm going to go right back again, just piggybacking off great conversations. The instant the banks change their mindset towards being vertical or uni-product focused of deposit only and start thinking about use cases that create value, they will find that the economics make sense to start serving rural and semi-urban and urban setups that are along verticals, are along value chains. I'll give you a simple example of something, and I'm winging this. If you were to start thinking about the sugar industry, just sugar in Pakistan, this is an entirely local industry, and you started serving that from all the way from the Karyana store where you can do credit to buy sugar, all the way up to the distributor, that value chain can be digitized and can be valuable for every single fintech, bank, consumer, merchant, everyone. But someone has to look at the whole. When you look at the one Karyana store and say, yaar, is Karyana store ki koi value hai? तो उस करियाना स्टोर की शायद इकोनॉमिक्स में वैल्यू नहीं बनेगी, लेकिन 10 करियाना स्टोर्स इन F6 की वैल्यू बन सकती है. वो सप्लायर के साथ लिंक हो सकता है, वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर के साथ हो सकता है. आप इस वक्त फिनटेक्स का प्ले अगर देखें ना, आपको ये नजर आएगा, whether you look at Hubbles or you look at what cost, this is where value is being created, and everyone wants this data. Everyone wants to find who else they can serve with this. That's something that we have to do to get to the rural. It won't start with, let me go find the least served community in the country and give them financial services. They will use it for cash in and cash out. It'll be the agent model. It'll be, can you transfer this money for me? Because it'll cost me more to take the money from my village to the next than for you to do it for me in 15 minutes. That's the only value that's currently being created, and we have to get beyond that.
Thank you, Mahmood. So, Mudassir Saab.
I think everyone has already made some excellent points. Not much to add, but I will just say that, look, the principle here is that Kausif and Atyab earlier talked about is of embedded finance, right? So the idea is not so much that we will go and create these beautiful new products that all of a sudden the entire rural Pakistan will say we love these products and start using them. The idea is of relevance. And the idea is embedding your product and use cases in their value chains and income streams and in their daily lives. So once that starts happening, the rural Pakistan, anywhere where there is, mobile broadband available, will have access to financial services. It's very simple. So, and this is exactly the principle that all of us, I think, today are talking about, is through partnerships. So whoever has advantage in building these partnerships, some of the banks, I think at least one bank has sponsors who have, very deep level of expertise in the rural economy, and they have a massive business that they can leverage. So obviously that's an advantage that they would capitalize on. So, but just like Atyab said, we are very open to going into these partnerships where we can extend digital credit and other financial services to people who are living in rural Pakistan. And just to share with you that already a very large number of rural Pakistanis are using digital financial services. If I were to share with you the distribution of usage of EasyPaisa across Pakistan, you would be amazed that in very, very remote corners of Pakistan, people are very actively using digital payments and also saving now increasingly using our digital wallet. Similarly, we have a pretty robust digital lending program also. As soon as people have a digital footprint, by start making digital payments, we can actually establish a credit score for them and give them a loan also, which is also happening very increasingly. Now, what is not happening at the same pace is this is digital financial services having an impact in the rural economy on how they earn their livelihood. And I think that's where there is opportunity for tremendous amount of new work. I believe majority of that will happen through partnerships with those players who actually understand and operate in the rural economy. And just like, Kausif touched upon that, we are talking about embedded finance, and we are then talking about the engagement economy. So you become relevant to them, then you, create user engagement through use cases that are relevant for them. And then many times, this data is monetized in other ways. And so the modern banking, digital banking would look very different from the traditional today's monolithic banking model, right? Where the banks are essentially a standalone animal, and from start to finish, they create they acquire the raw material themselves, they make the product and then distribute it themselves. That's not what the banks of tomorrow are going to look like. Actually, I should say banks of today, digital banks, many of us are represented here today. So that's in a nutshell is my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, just to add on to Mudassir and Mahmood, what they say is today there are lots of these agri platforms that are coming in, and this is exactly what Mudassir and Mahmood are speaking about. So these agri platforms, are already doing all the hard work to bring in multiple players on top, like the farmers are there, the input providers, pesticides, cars, etc. Those guys are there. The marketplaces are there. the equipment providers, the tractors, etc., and so on, they are there. And now what happens is that a digital bank or a fintech like Finja would come in and just plug themselves or embed themselves within this value chain that Mahmood was speaking about. And now what you have is frictionless payments and lending happening within this ecosystem, which is actually purpose-built, meaning that the farmer is not getting cash and walking away with it, but he's actually getting credit that he can use upstream to buy pesticides or get paid when he delivers the sugarcane to the mill, etc. So these are purpose built, they are frictionless, the cost of acquisition is lower, there's a high level of relevance, etc. And like Mudassir is saying, the banks or the fintechs are actually not going out and manufacturing these platforms. They're just coming in with a service and embedding that service. So all of these things are in action, and these agri platforms today are trying to partner with fintechs because the digital banks are still start to come in, and through and at the back of those fintechs are these incumbent banks. But imagine when Atiyab, when a fintech has to partner with Higo Bank that Atiyab is running, and he's building that ground up from that foundational design. So that partnership with the fintech and with these agri platforms would be embedded in as a design element and not as an afterthought. That's when things are really going to take off.
Okay, so thank you for those very detailed responses. I am going to ask one question with regards to ChatGPT and ChatGPT plugins, just because everybody's talking about it, before we move to questions that are being asked by our participants. So, what are implications for the banking and fintech sectors in Pakistan? Is it too early to say? We're already seeing some financial entities globally beginning to introduce ChatGPT plugins and work with them. So, in the e-commerce space specifically at this point, but where do you see this going?
Look, again, ChatGPT is just another tool, right? Like any other tool in your tool shed, if you don't use it, it has no efficacy. And we expect that our banks and players in the market are going to adapt ChatGPT and sort of bring it into what they're offering to their customers, while we are still trying to resolve basic problems. So in the Pakistani context, yes, taking a shout in the market that we are the first bank to do a ChatGPT plugin or use AI for customer service is a great shout. But the fact is that it still takes 6 weeks at least to get a loan from a bank. You need mounds and mounds of paperwork to get it done. You need to prove your identity many times over in the process. You need to be able to sort of pledge everything but your firstborn child to get any form of credibility from the bank. So look, ChatGPT is a great tool, and those who use it are going to be ahead in the game. And where I feel ChatGPT will be used is in back office, right? Is in being able to have your entire regulation ingested by an AI tool to then evaluate whether your processes are compliant or not in real time. And then generating a report for the business user of those processes to tell them how to resolve for that compliance and to give them recommendations on how to then start remedial processes to be compliant. I expect AI to be fully embedded in back offices before it becomes a front office tool, because the moment it becomes a front office tool, it becomes a joke. And the example is recently NFTs, right? There are a few banks in Pakistan who are building a branch in the metaverse. that sounds ridiculous, right? People who don't have access to basic connectivity, how do you expect them to go interact in the branch in the metaverse with their avatars and with the avatars of a branch manager? वो branch manager जो आप branch में जाए आपको time नहीं देता, आप उसके avatar से interact करेंगे online to me is a ridiculous concept. But then again, we have a tendency in this market to take the most ironic position of advanced tools and technology. ChatGPT is a great tool. I expect everyone on my team to be using prompts. In fact, full disclosure, जब आपने मेरे सवालात भेजे थे, तो मैंने ये सवालात ChatGPT में डाले to get my thinking started. It is a great place to get your thinking started right now. लेकिन अभी ChatGPT जो है वो एक नौनिहाल बच्चा है. आप नौनिहाल बच्चे को जो वर्ड सिखाते हैं, जो वो वर्ड्स वापस बोलता है, तो आप बहुत खुश होते हैं. लेकिन आप उस नौनिहाल बच्चे से फलसफे पर डिस्कशन नहीं कर सकते हैं. That is where ChatGPT is today. AI will grow. AI will advance itself faster than any technology that we know. But let's not expect it to move mountains. Abhi bhi humans have a big role to play, especially in the financial services context in Pakistan. और उसके अंदर हमें समझना है. पहले तो हमें empathy लानी है, जो कि एक human trait है, AI का trait नहीं है. फिर हमें जब problems को solve करना है, उसको human-centric design से solve करना है. To understand कि आपके जो customers हैं, जो आपके users of your service हैं, they have human problems that need solving. वो understanding अभी आपके पास AI में नहीं है, right? Yes, in e-commerce and some of the more advanced aspect of financial services, we will see faster adoption of ChatGPT. But let's not expect कि ये हमारी बहुत सी problems on day one solve कर देगा. We'll have to help it grow, and we'll have to use it the right way for it to be effective in the long term.
Okay, so Athiya was saying to us, we should not worry about losing our jobs just yet. Anything that, Kasif, you would like to add?
No, I agree with Athiya. In technology goes through a technology hype cycle, and that's just we are. Every time something new comes in, we make a big deal of it well before it starts to hit maturity. And AI and machine learning is no exception, with only one exception, that it's actually going to grow exponentially, as opposed to some of the other technologies, although they grow very fast as well. And exponential is a concept that human brain does not fathom very well, because it becomes, it grows so quickly that we don't compute it really well. So all of that is there. But for example, I'll talk about Finja. So in Finja, I'm surprised now some of my guys are coming in and starting to pitch on projects that I thought are outside of our grasp or we can't do as yet. And the answer is that they're actually leaning on ChatGPT already. Like, one of my machine learning guy came in 3 weeks ago and said that he's going to develop chatbots for all our products. And, and we've tried chatbots before and haven't done well. And I was like, how would you do that? And what it turns out is that, ChatGPT can help you create those chatbots for your apps, for your things at a basic level, obviously, right? So what I'm saying is that I agree that back office will be the first area where these things will happen. But overall, they will very quickly come into lowering the development costs of a digital bank or a fintech, because parts of the code, etc., or the thinking, etc., is going to come from these AI machine learning tools. And at the same time, so it's going to have operational impact. It's going to have developmental impact in lowering costs. It's going to increase customer experience. It's going to reduce time, etc. And it's just going to make, like other industries, financial services more inclusive. But it's going to take time. I mean, it's not that magic pill that has arrived, but over the next several months or a few years, it's going to be a force that would radically increase the inclusion and the experience around financial services. And the entities that will start out early, will reap benefit also. Yeah. Mahmood?
I think you guys have covered a lot of what we've said. I mean, the reality is it's a mindset issue first. ChatGPT, like Atyab said, is a tool. Used effectively, it'll help expedite so much from backend to eventually front end, but it's a tool that's got to be driven in the mindset. Do I want to be that fast, or do I continue to want to be the white elephant in the room that is really going to take forever? ChatGPT is not really going to help that a whole lot. I can put it there to pretend I'm using it. But I was speaking with a friend yesterday who's designed an app in a matter of 50 hours. This is something that would normally have taken 10 people 6 months of time. And this is a financial app that's taken 50 hours, one person's man hours, with a majority of those hours really just being used to make sure integrations at the back end are being done correctly. Because ChatGPT can't help you integrate with Nadra or can't help you integrate with the credit bureaus. You actually have to do that yourselves. But 50 hours to produce an app that's ready to go out to the public. Very different from 6 months, which is the current timeline on the most basic of products that you could possibly produce.
Oh, yes.
Once that mindset is there, the change will come. Yeah.
Ji Mudassir.
I think I'm more in Kasif's camp. I think that this will lead to exponential advancement and development, and human mind is actually wired to think incrementally. So, but I want to just give you a little bit of perspective कि जब कासिफ और मैं हमने इकट्ठा सिमसिम launch करने पे काम किया था, I think it was 2015 or 16. That was Pakistan's first digital wallet that had actually remote KYC and which was not based on your SIM. That was only like less than 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, and look at where Pakistan is today. I'm not talking about the world, I'm just talking about where Pakistan is today. कि जहाँ पर अब ये frictionless onboarding is the minimum baseline for any self-respecting organization, even not only just for fintechs, but even for commercial banks. और 9 करोड़ लोगों ने जो है मोबाइल वॉलेट खोली हैं. ये सारा जो है अभी तब हुआ जब पाकिस्तान में अभी स्मार्टफोन की पेनिट्रेशन इतनी नहीं बढ़ी थी और ये चीजें बड़ी इन्फेंसी स्टेज के ऊपर थी. So think about this, that the large language models like ChatGPT, this is really generation 1, and they are updating this in every few weeks now. GPT-3 आया, 3.5, 4 भी आ गया, 5 पे already काम कर रहे हैं. It is going to get exponentially smarter. And if we think this will not have impact on how we do banking and in the financial services space, I think we are in it for a rude awakening. पहली चीज तो ये होने जा रही है मेरे ख्याल में, जैसे अतीब ने बताया कि आपका सारा जो बैक ऑफिस है वो इतनी तेजी से ऑटोमेट होगा, और इवन आपके बहुत सारे जो सपोर्ट के चैनल्स हैं, लाइक आई हैव ऑलरेडी asked the team to start looking into that, how can we move our call center to more like a ChatGPT run platform. I think it's very easily doable now. This will be, you will start seeing this in probably at a commercial scale in less than 2 years, in my opinion. And think about how many thousands of people are working in call centers today. We alone have 500 people, right? So what's the impact on us? We have started thinking about it. Also think about how many, the other thing that one has to think about, that this will increase the productivity of your existing people exponentially, right? So I think in the future, commercial banks would be able to run an entire branch with one employee, rather than having like an army of people in it. Microsoft ने already जो है वो Copilot launch कर दिया, which is exactly it's your Copilot, right? So it actually allows you to become more productive. एक प्रोग्रामर जो है वो 10 प्रोग्रामर्स के की productivity already देने लग गया है. And this is we are in the generation 1 of AI implications. तो मेरे ख्याल में if you think about 5 years, if you fast forward 5 years, the impact will be much bigger than what we can anticipate right now. And I think with what we and I see news के बहुत सारे जो हमारे commercial banks है वो announce कर रहे हैं कि retirement age जो है वो उन्होंने बढ़ा के 60 साल से 65 साल कर दी है अपने लोगों की. And I think what they should really, and all of us, I'm not being critical of them, I'm just saying that we really need to like wake up and think about reskilling our people so that they can start using these tools, become exponentially more productive, because we are really lucky to be operating in an economy which is 70% unbanked. तो हम सारे जो हैं, अगर हम मैंने अपनी organization को जब मैं देख रहा हूँ, तो my math is कि we should be able to get about 5 times bigger and 1/3 less people in the next 3 years. That's the kind of productivity which is already available. So we can actually do a lot more with a lot less in a nutshell, but we have to have leadership and organization design that allows for it. Otherwise, you will see organizations become irrelevant very, very quickly because they won't be able to compete.
Thank you. So bottom line, not something to be ignored and to not be paying attention to at this point in time, ChatGPT. Okay, so I am going to just walk us through a few questions from our participants. Participants are asking about cybercrime and digital fraud, and what the best way to deal with that is. Now, we are hearing reports of increasing digital fraud in Pakistan. What do you think are some of the key items, and any one of you can take this question, what are some of the key areas that we need to really start focusing on?
I can take that.
Please.
देखिए, डिजिटल फ्रॉड जो है पाकिस्तान में वो मेजॉरिटी इसलिए हो रहा है कि majority of the people are being scammed. It's more than fraud, is actually a lot of scam is happening where somebody, what we call social engineering, आपको कोई कॉल करके ये कन्विंस कर लेता है कि आप उनको अपनी कुछ प्राइवेट इंफॉर्मेशन जो है वो दे दें, जैसे कि OTP जो मेजॉरिटी लोगों के साथ होता है, they give their one time password which is given to them, and then they either take over their app or they convince them to do a transaction which is going to a fraudulent beneficiary, and the person is really convinced that they're themselves doing the transaction. So एक तो इसका जो आसान हल है वो ये है कि हम कंज्यूमर अवेयरनेस बढ़ाएं. एक बड़ी सिंपल चीज है कि लोग जो मर्जी कहें क़यामत आ गई है, आसमान टूट पड़ा है, you just don't give your personal information to anyone, because all the banks are saying we are not calling you to ask for any OTP from you or any personal information. अगर हम ये baseline की एक ये चीज कर लें तो there is I'm not aware hardly of any incident, not only with us but majority, I think all banks, जहाँ पर किसी ने आके system के अंदर आके hack करके take over कर लिया और fraud कर लिया, ऐसा नहीं हो रहा है. This is all happening at the consumer level. पहली चीज तो ये समझने वाली. दूसरी चीज जो है जो important है, which is more of at a regulatory level, जहाँ we now need to start thinking about new ways of authentication. We need to think beyond biometric. We need to think beyond OTP, and there are ways it is possible. And I think this is where regulator really needs to brainstorm with the industry, and we need to completely crack this problem in a completely different way. We are still in a very archaic way of transaction authentication.
And having said that, we cannot ignore cybersecurity measures that need to be taken. This is absolutely right. Abhi tak we are lucky कि हम social engineering से आगे नहीं निकले हैं, and we haven't been hit by a big hack job at some point in time. मेरे ख्याल में हमें ये awareness create करने के साथ-साथ we also need to now bolster. तो जब हम बात करते हैं cloud की, for example, one of the benefits of cloud is nearly impenetrable cybersecurity, right? That's why it's important when we work with the regulator, we are educating them on different aspects of the cloud. The regulator has been very progressive in reaching out to Google and AWS to get a holistic view, to come up with this framework that they have come up with. However, there is room. And one of the benefits of working with new technologies would be that if they're not on-prem, there is less of a likelihood for it to be hacked, because on cloud it would be behind many layers of security. जहाँ पे linking your older question to this, right? जहाँ पे आप ChatGPT या AI tools को इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं is also in fraud pattern recognition. And to be able to start to prescribe pathways for your systems to detect fraud early, even if it's a social engineering activity, you could program AI to detect that. And if they see a pattern of that, they can tend to put in a stop. So remedial measures and automating those remedial measures is something where I do expect AI to come up and start to bolster our cybersecurity efforts as well.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to add?
Just a tiny little comment, and sorry, Kausif, I know you're ready.
No,
to go.
please go. Please go.
But I think Mudassir spoke about something with OTPs and the behaviors that we have centered around that and educating. I think as banks, we also need to be a little bit introspective. You can still, there's banks that I have a relationship with where I'm required to give an OTP that they issue to me during a call. And I can't proceed until that happens, right? I'm required to communicate it to them verbally, not type it in. They'll say, and these are big banks. These are the biggest banks of your country that require this to happen. And these are things that make absolutely no sense. When you argue with them, they say, sorry, there's no way to bypass this. If you want to use your phone app, this is the only way it can be initiated. And that means that there is a legitimate time to give over your OTP, and there's a non-legitimate time to give over your OTP. And this is
confusing.
This is very confusing. We've got to fix all of ourselves together before we can actually start communicating with the world out there and saying this is never to happen. Just that my tiny bit there.
Very true, because now apparently, one of these scams is such that actual bank UANs are being used with a prefix. So it really looks as though it's the bank that's calling you. So yeah, that's very valid.
And they have your information, right? They have all of it.
Exactly.
All they need is that one OTP, which they've triggered from password lost.
Very true.
Yeah, this is called phishing, right? With a PHI. And standard practice is that, like Mudassir spoke about, banks in most all the countries, the banks will never have you compromise or ask for your personal information. OTP, there is no question of you voicing your OTP in any circumstances, to your bank or to anybody. So, I mean, that shouldn't happen. I just wanted to say this, that, beyond the social engineering and phishing, and identity theft, I think if you were to ask this question, that what are the top 3 things that can go wrong in progressing on the digital agenda for the country? So I think the number 1 thing that can actually go wrong is a large-scale fraud that Atyab started to speak about. And always remember that fraud and cybercrime is not different. It's like water. It would always flow towards the least resistant angle. And it would always flow where there is the most value available. And as we go out and build these digital ecosystems where information and data and value will move effortlessly, and we are all arriving there, and we've already built part of those systems now. Digital banks coming in, the collaborations we spoke about for the last hour would push us into that direction. And that's where the global and everything is interconnected. So the global fraudsters, cybercrime specialists, etc., would now start to look at Pakistan in a very different light. because now there is this low-hanging fruit which is becoming available for them. And before that, we were under the radar because we were really a closed play. We didn't have these enabling ecosystems which are coming in now. So I think the risk is not just, obviously the number one risk is around social engineering and phishing and identity theft, but there is a bigger risk looming, which is that Pakistan appearing on the map as one of the main places where the global cyber crime folks start to look at us as the main target. And I don't think that as an industry we have done enough here. And it's not just the regulator. I mean, the problem is that the regulators go out and give us these checklists which are so much in the past, and all the incumbent banks' infrastructure is there to tick mark all the damn boxes that we've actually done all of this, but in reality, we do very little. So we go out, spend a lot of money, get all these fancy firewalls, etc., make all the tick marks, but really, we are not doing real work to embrace ourselves for this coming danger. So what I'm trying to say is that the number one risk that we have in pushing the digital agenda back a few years, because once people become scared and the industry becomes scared, it takes a long time for them to revive, is actually this.
Very
That's a
true. Yeah. G. Atyab.
No, I was just going to say that we need to stop hiding behind regulation, right? The regulator is there to facilitate, and the more progress we show them, the quickly they will come up the curve in their learning as well. They're looking to us to innovate, while as we are looking at them to give us the guidelines to innovate. In my opinion, regulation follows innovation rather than the other way around. And cybersecurity is one of those things where we need to go for state of the art. We need to go for the best solutions that are out there, because as Kasif rightly said, one big event and all of us will suffer.
Absolutely. And this time, yes,
Sorry,
please go ahead.
I just wanted to say something that maybe we can consider taking a platform approach here. For example, the 5 digital banks are coming in. Do all of them need to go out and build their own cybersecurity protocols, which are world-class? Or can we consider creating a consortium and then bringing in economies of scale? And now all of our 5 players are protected, meaning we have so many EMIs, new age NBFCs like Finja, etc. Why are we trying to build these things on our own? We can never build these level of sophistication on our own. Our business model will not allow that. But if we were to go out and collaborate, same for incumbents. So I think there is an opportunity here to go and create a platform approach, build an economies of scale, and build one highest minimum standard for all of these financial services. And people want to do something on top of that, then that's a good thing. But everybody should have a baseline, and their platform thinking should come in.
So taking the partnership model a step further, making it even more real. Okay, great. So I think last few minutes, I think I'm going to just ask you all to quickly give me your top, sort of to elaborate on the top 3 factors or characteristics that will determine the success of a digital bank in your view. So Atyab, we'll begin with you.
Understand the customer, understand their pain points, not really waiting for innovation to be guided by regulation, and always going to the central bank with ideas that can help push regulation forward in the right way, and making sure that we are not doing it in isolation. We have to partner up. We have to buddy up with everyone who's trying to solve part of a problem that we are also trying to solve. And then I think with these three fundamentals, we should be in good shape.
Okay, Kasif?
Okay, I think the first thing is the foundational design of a digital bank. Incumbents are like Walmarts and digital banks are like Amazon. So they are digital first. So how you go out and create that foundational design is key. And in that foundational design, you will win. And we already talked about that the incumbent has a foundational design in branch that they got to lose, but digital banks don't have that. The second is the operational design, meaning how do you go out and structure your org chart? And, you know, Mudassir speaks a lot about this, and that's how I've understood it, is that it's about the engagement economy. If it's about the engagement economy, you can't have people in the digital bank driving conventional KPIs. I mean, if you create a digital bank, Atyab creates a digital bank, I would be disappointed if he's got people there driving deposit and driving loans and all of those things. Those are consequences. He needs to go out and create an org chart where people are actually, their KPIs are engagement based, and they got to go out and create engagement with their users, which when he says customer experience, and it's that engagement that you start to measure. And through the engagement, everything else becomes a consequence. So the second thing is the operational design. And obviously, if you start talking like that in an incumbent organization, you know, that can't happen. So you know, that's the third one. In my view, is and they're not in any order of priority, but that's culture and talent. And how do you build a culture where there is tolerance for failure, and how do you engage world-class talent now in different configurations? You know, in Mudassir's and Atyab's team, a digital team, people don't have to be based in Pakistan. They can be anywhere. They could be part-time, etc. Their, you know, their engagement contracts could be very different. The way, if their institution is winning, the compensation can be very different. And the culture in which people are engaging and unlocking value has to be, you know, risk-taking, high tolerance of failure, etc. I think it's the combination of the foundational design, the operational design, culture, and talent that would make these organizations so much more effective, you know, than the ones that we have.
Okay, thank you. Mahmood?
I'm not really sure I have a whole lot to add. I think the two things that I feel strongly about with all of the digital players, one is going to be trust. A significant change, and this is not just, do you have my money, but are you actually fulfilling the promises and the pain that you said that you would solve? And that's the connected mindset with that, is that this is an evolving and moving target. It isn't here's a great product and you guys now have to stick to this product for life. It means that you create a team that's really ready to constantly evolve and upgrade that product. I think the second thing that Kasif spoke about, and I love, is it's NPS, both internally and externally. You've got to be measuring how happy your customer is, both internally and externally, to be able to create this first thing that you want, a high trust bank. I think when you get that formula right, and there are players that are starting to do that in Pakistan, at Alif, we believe we do that really well in Tajikistan. And by the way, this also comes with giving away trust. I think Alif has the youngest workforce in a bank that I've ever seen in my life. The average age is about 24 in the organization, with people with 7 years of work experience at Alif at the age of 24. So they've really done a good job with trusting young people. And I think that's essential if that's who you want to serve.
Yeah, and a real investment in the next generation of your clients, right?
Absolutely.
Incoming, and then, yeah, they're innovating for themselves. Amazing. Okay, so Mudassir.
Meher, I'll share with you the three principles that are essentially the key pillars of our strategies. I'll share those with you very openly. The first one is embedded finance. Now, what embedded finance means for us is value chains and income streams. So embedding financial services in value chains and income streams. The second one is what we call a neo design. So, our bank has to be designed on neo bank principles. And what that means is aggregation of use cases, integration with other platforms, with other ecosystems, and then developing partnerships that everyone has talked about today. And the third principle is that offline feeds online. So what that means for us is that as Pakistan's offline economy is being digitalized, we leverage that so that when we become part of it, it grows our online platform. So these are the three principles and priorities on which we are working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been a real pleasure being part of this panel and having been given the opportunity to moderate this session. I think it is the whole financial sector is sitting to see where these digital banks are going to go. And sort of one of the major things that we find, I think, exciting or are going to find exciting is the fact that these are not your standard kind of organizations which are kind of ossified or stuck in time. We're looking forward to seeing something that is innovating and moving forward as time goes by. So I think those are fascinating aspects to the digital bank, and we're really looking forward to not just the banks coming online, but also the partnerships that will flourish with these banks coming online. So I'm going to thank all our panelists and hand over to Fahad from the Pakistan FinTech Network.
You're mute, Fahad.
No,
We hear you.
we can't hear you. There's something with the mic, I think, because you were unmuted earlier.
Oh, I had it mute.
Fahad, you may want to log out and then log back in again. Maybe your mic will start working then.
Nope.
You instantly go back onto mute after unmuting. I mean, that's what is visible on our screens.
How is it now?
Now it's perfect.
Thank you very much. So Pakistan FinTech Networks extends special thanks to all of the participants. You have spared the time and put light on the key facts that how digital bank gonna grow. And it's very delighted to hear that the partnership is one of the key thing which we have discussed all across, that will play a key and primary role. So Meher, Kasif, Atiyab, Mahmood, Mudassir, thank you very much for being with us, and let's wait for the time to connect again. Thank you.
Inshallah. Thank you, Fahad. Thank you, PFN, for holding us.
Thank you, Meher. Thank you, Fahad.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Khud Hafiz.